So, hi everyone. My name is Daniel Zitter, and we're starting to talk today with two great people, Henny and Laura. Today we're going to be talking about, hi guys. So today we're going to be talking about how PMOs can influence the project management culture in the organization. So that's going to be our broad topic, and we'll hear more about that as we go along. Again, my name is Daniel Zitter. I'll be hosting this discussion and probably weighing in here and there. So with that, why don't we go to our other participants and let them present themselves. So hi, Laura. You want to present yourself? Hi there.
Sure. Thank you, Daniel, for doing this. Henny, it's fantastic to see you again. And a little bit about me. I am Laura Barnard. I am Chief Impact Driver for PMO Strategies. And I spent 15 years inside organizations as a PMO leader, starting in 1999 as a PMO leader. And by the way, everyone that's starting out, I had no idea what I was doing back then, but fortunately for you guys, you don't have to start with a blank slate like I did, because now there are folks like us that have been doing it for a long time that are here to help. So after I ran PMOs for 15 years, I kept finding myself saying, I wish I had me when I was you. And so I spent the next almost 8 years now with PMO Strategies, helping organizations deliver higher impact on all of their projects across their entire strategy, managing, leveraging, and unleashing the power of project management in the PMO. So thank you guys again for having me here. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
All right, thank you very much, Laura. Henny, do you want to present yourself?
Okay, I'm always saying I'm Henny. I'm this silly old guy from the Netherlands with a passion for project program and portfolio management, and of course, PMOs. I have 40 years of experience. I worked 37 years in the financial industry. I was head of PMO in many different departments and business units. I built in Europe several PMOs. I let them work together in an hub and spoke model, having portfolio management across the whole organization. I did the same in Asia and different countries over there. I built also these organizations. I'm always a type of sharing information. I would like to see that everyone can make use, like Laura was saying, to help others to improve themselves, to not reinvent the wheels, etc. So already 4 years ago, I started with two friends, a small company, HWP Consulting. And there we also do it. It's all about sharing knowledge, giving training classes, being a consultant, helping organizations to improve themselves. As I said, I like to share. So I created a blog, and I put a lot of information on my blog. I can say almost every book which is produced or published in the Netherlands on one of these topics, like project program portfolio management, I will review it. So I read at least one or maybe two books a week about these topics, and I put it on my blog. Probably I will create a quick reference card on the topic, so you have a one-page to summarize the whole book. And when there's time left, I also like to write books. So I have already maybe 15 or 20 books about these topics. So that's why I have a passion for this area.
That's great. And Henny, can you tell us what the name of your blog is?
That's just, if you Google my name, you will see that, Henny Portman. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, wonderful.
There are not that many Henny Portmans in the world.
Henny, I've already promised I'm sending you my book when I publish it next year so that you can review it as well. And I'll have to have you on the podcast, the PMO Strategies podcast too.
That's great. So I actually sent his book. Yeah, I already sent you my book. It was sent over last week. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to see your review on that. So that's going to be great. So just to present myself, my name is Daniel Zitter. I'm also a project management consultant. I've been in the field for 20 years, also establishing PMOs in different organizations. I'm based in Israel, and I'm very focused on our territory here. So that's all I do is project management here in Israel. 6 years ago, I actually opened my own consulting firm together with my partner, Chamutal Weiss, together. The first project that we had was writing a book together, and we wrote the book Being a Project Manager. So that was our first exciting project that we did, and since then we've been together. And we just released a year ago 2 board games that are for use of project management offices and project managers in organizations, just to play and learn about project management through the games. So that's a little bit about myself, but I promise that we'll talk today about project management culture and how we as PMOs can influence the project management culture in organizations. So I'd like to turn to you, Henny, first and ask you, how do you think that you can, what is, let's start with what is project management culture in organization?
Okay, let's start. Who was it? Peter Drucker, I think, who said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I'm not using that phrase. I'm always saying, if you look at culture, culture makes or breaks your transitions, agile transitions, but you could say your projects. So it's really important when you talk about culture. And just to give a few examples, when you talk about culture and talking about PMOs, talking about project managers, maybe one thing is a culture in an organization. Are we making use of templates? Just one example. And do we need to make use of very detailed templates? Do we have to be very precise when using those templates? Is there someone who is checking if we are using those templates? Some would call it the template police. Or do you have an organization where we say, yeah, forget about those templates. No, it's about the principles behind. Why are we doing that? So you could also say an organization which is based on or is using principles, that's part of the DNA, that's part of the culture of that organization. So I think that's just an example. Another one about culture could be looking at the anxiety or maybe looking at the thrust in an organization and about a sponsor or project executive versus a project manager. Is there trust between the two? And I think that's really a very important one. And maybe later I can give some fantastic examples about trust or the anxiety when it's not there and what can happen in a specific situation. And then I'm looking at some project boards and I have some fantastic examples on that.
Okay, so Laura, what do you think? What does it mean to you when we talk about a project culture in an organization?
So I want to start by kind of setting the stage on my belief system around project management in the first place, right? And Henny knows we've talked about this before. So project management is not the end game. Project management is the framework, the mechanisms that we use to deliver on the organization strategy. And the PMO should be the impact engine that helps to ensure that the organization strategy is delivered with the highest possible return on investment as quickly as possible. Every organization, every business leader I've talked to will tell you, I don't care if it's a government organization, a nonprofit, private, public, it doesn't matter. They all are looking for that, what's the worth it factor. Is it worth doing this project to achieve our strategic objectives, right? So if you set that stage, that project management is the mechanism, right? And the PMO is the engine that drives all of that, then we shift the way we think and talk about project management. So project management is not about the templates, the tools, and the process. It's about enabling a belief system and behaviors that help to empower people to deliver on the organization strategy. And there's so many different pieces and parts to this, but the very first one starts with rethinking and talking differently about project management so that it is a common language in the organization. We often talk, in all of us project management geeks out there, and I've had my PMP since 2004, and I've been doing this stuff for 25 years. I get it. Us project geeks, we get together and we can go crazy talking about all the different ways you can manage risk and all these things about EVM calculations and all of that. And no one in the organization really cares about that as much as we do. So what we have to do is stop trying to shove our project management culture at people and embrace a more holistic perspective that we, all of us in our organization, are there to help enable delivery of that strategy. So when we say project management culture, we have to be very careful about what we really want to achieve, because I can tell you our business leaders are not going to say, hold on, wait. Let's talk more about templates and process. Can you bring me some more templates before we do some more? Can you tell me how all the different ways and all the different factors you use to calculate EVM? Nobody cares about that stuff, like me, right? And I know we all agree on that. So, so to set the stage from my perspective, and I know we'll dive deeper into this, but I just want to change the thinking that we're going into it with. We don't want to shove project management culture on people, right? We want everyone to be thinking and operating. And by the way, this is what every single business leader says to me. When we're called into organizations to help create project management culture, it's about creating an enabling force. And we, PMO, is the engine in the middle of that, an enabling force to help unleash the potential and the power to deliver on the organization's strategy.
Right.
So, so there's a different, so absolutely it's project management culture, and it's got to be done in a way that everyone can understand it and connect to it and understand why they're doing what they're doing, right? I think Henny is right on with the whole culture will eat strategy for breakfast. And the reverse of that is, if you align your culture to delivering on strategy, you will create, your entire organization will become an impact engine. So, so I just want to set the stage with a little of how we talk about it is very, very important as to, and will determine how successful it is.
I totally agree. So having said that, and setting the stage of what the project management culture is, I pride myself as being somebody very practical. Looking at, okay, we talked about some theory now, so let's talk about some examples. So what can we actually do in order to, do all the cool stuff that you talked about right now? So Henny, what do you think? What would the thing that you would do?
Let's give an example. Many years ago, I was in a situation watching from really close, building a shared service center somewhere in East Europe. And that was a shared service center for a back office, and many business units had to make use of that shared service center. So they created a project board to steer this initiative, and CEOs of different business units were part of that project board. And because they were all situated in different countries and they want to meet face to face, now we would do this completely different, but at that moment we did it face to face. So the place for the project board meeting was at an airport. So everyone could fly in the morning, have the project board meeting, and left. And that started, and they had, it was a large project, so they had agreed, okay, we will come together every Friday. Every Friday, twice a month. So every 2 weeks they came together. And after a couple of months, they came to the conclusion, okay, but there are so many discussions, there are so many decisions to be made. We cannot manage this in twice a month. So we agree we will come together every Friday. And they came together every Friday, and the decisions were again adding up. And at a certain moment they said, okay, but half a day is not enough. So maybe we must start earlier. So those CEOs have to come already Thursday evening. And so they started on Thursday evening, okay, having a dinner, and then the whole Friday they had the project board meeting. And then they said, yeah, but we cannot continue with that. And that was the moment when I came in. And so I was observing what is happening there. And what was happening is that every decision had to be taken there. And I started to have interviews, and I find out that there was absolutely no trust between executives and project managers.
Mm.
And because there was no trust, they said, okay, we have to make all our decisions by ourselves. So there I started, okay, if you want to stay and maybe it will become 2 days every week to make the decisions, you have to do something different. And I started a discussion with them. What does it mean to think about trust, to avoid the anxiety and having trust in the organization? And then we had discussions. Yeah, trust. What do you mean with trust? And then I thought, okay, how am I going to show them what we mean with trust? So I created some workshops, and one of the first things we started in that workshop was, okay, we were with a whole group of CEOs, and we went to a climbing wall. And these guys get blindfolded.
Oh, wow.
And you have to climb on that wall, and then someone else,
guides them.
a project manager, had to give them directions. So with your left foot, 10 inches up, or a little bit to the right, or a little bit to the left, just to experience what we mean with trust. And after that, it was a half-day exercise. Okay, we started with some first discussions about what we call the tolerances. Okay, when can someone make a decision? When not? Okay, when do we have to escalate? We don't need to escalate all the time. So based on that discussion, we started to make some small changes and to say, okay, and in these situations, you don't have to come. And then within a couple of weeks, they could see that the agenda was not that long anymore because many decisions were, okay, already taken. And I think decision-making, could be one of those things looking at the culture as well, as the Standards Group in one of their latest chaos reports mentioned, talking about decision latency. So that's one of the key factors why so many projects fail across the world. And it's all about this decision making, or you could translate that, it's all about trust. It's about, I don't trust you, so I have to make the decisions by my own, and you have to wait.
That's a great example. Thank you, Henny. Laura, do you have an example for us about
So I think one of the things, like I mentioned, one of the things we're often called in to do is to help kind of create that culture. Now, what the phone call usually comes from the CEO, right? We have a great referral-based consulting practice. Of course, we do training and coaching, a lot of stuff directly for PMO leaders specifically. And what I found is when the CEO calls me in and he wants me to work with his PMO leader, or she wants me to work with the project team to help create that culture, I usually end up spending about half my time working with the executive to help them understand their role in all of this, right? And Henny, you and I talked about that. That's what the book I'm writing is about, is bringing those two pieces of the puzzle together, because that's really what it takes. So we do this all the time. And one of the times I was brought into an organization where we really needed to instill project management culture for everyone. Now, this wasn't just for people that were doing PMO and project work. This was for the entire team and all of the leadership team, all the people doing different work. And this is a call we often get. And one of the things that I emphasize right away to that executive is that, ProSci, if you guys are familiar with ProSci, or the Organizational Change Management certifying body, they talk about sponsorship engagement is the make or break factor between success and failure in an organization's ability to embrace and adopt change, any change, including cultural and specifically cultural change. So one of the things that I do and did in this situation is I help the business leader understand how they really needed to set the tone and get everyone aligned from the start with specifically what culture, what behaviors and beliefs were at the core foundation of what the organization really needed to be and who they wanted to become. So I worked with the leadership team, and this is something any PMO leader can do. You work with your executive to talk through what are the behaviors and the beliefs that we want to instill in this organization to bring that culture about. So that's what we spent time doing first. Always start with the executive first, set the tone from the top, help them understand how important it is to set the tone from the top. I have mixed beliefs on when and how you can use a consultant to come in. You can to bring in that outside perspective, but if you don't instill that culture from inside as a core belief system that the organization is going to adopt, then it's not going to matter. So we start by setting the tone at the top from the leader. I explain how important it is that that leader get very clear on the strategic objectives, why all of that matters, how everybody in the organization fits into that puzzle, right? Everybody wants to know that the work they do counts, that it matters. So part of getting aligned from the start is being able to really clearly articulate, here's our big picture objectives. Here's how you fit into that puzzle. Here's why this matters so much to us. And these are the mechanisms we're going to use to deliver on that. So
does everything have some part of the roles and responsibilities? Is that, part of it?
So of course, right? Like the mechanisms are all like, okay, now this you break it all the way down to here's who's going to do what. Here's who's accountable for what. I'm a big believer in having the business leaders very clearly state where their accountability lies and how they are delegating authority to deliver on those various components. That's a big piece that's often missing. And like Henny said, the trust isn't there in some organizations. So often you're in a position where people that are not available and can't make time for you for the next 3 weeks to have a meeting to make a decision will refuse to delegate that decision, right? We've never seen that before. So a lot of this building a PM culture, it cannot start with the PMO leader. It must start with the executive. And it's the PMO leader's responsibility to be super clear on what they need specifically from that sponsor, from that business leader to set the tone. And the only way to get them to really engage on that is to help them understand that the only way to be successful in achieving the outcomes they're looking to achieve is by starting with creating that alignment right from the executives. They cannot delegate their presence in this whole,
I totally agree. And, I find there are little techniques out there that everybody can use that help with this. So after you set together with the, higher ups, you set all the what you're trying to achieve and trying to do. I find that creating banners sometimes and putting them up in the organization in different places, it's just one technique that, not only saying it once, but you have it in front of your eyes.
Having it on the walls.
Or somewhere there. And another thing is that many people think that this is a one-time effort.
Right.
And it's really not, right? It's something that you need to have people express, maybe once in an email, and then talking to people about it, but you have to reinforce this all the time. So I find that holding regular, it could be during regular meetings, but it could also be very specific meetings. Sometimes you have special forums for project managers or for teams in a project. And in these forums, you talk about what's really important. And even though you've said it before, you say it again and again. I can give you an example. I've done many different projects at Intel sites around the world, and Intel is very into safety. Okay, so everything has to do with safety. So every meeting starts with, does anyone have anything to talk about safety? Has anything happened here about safety? So this is just an example of an organization that is trying to install something into all the employees, and they do it through talking about it all the time. So we don't want to go into the axis of talking about project management all the time. I mean, it doesn't make sense to do that way. But you do have to find places where you interject and you talk about this on a regular basis. Again, it can't be a one-time effort.
So Daniel, on that, sorry, Henny, on that, one of the techniques that our audience may find helpful is switching the conversation. No, we don't really want to talk about project management all the time. You do, but nobody else does. However, what you can talk about is the outcomes the organization is achieving as a result of doing that work, right? The project management is the means to the end. So what people love hearing is the stories of the wins and the outcomes that are achieved and how those outcomes are pushing that strategy forward in the organization. So that is absolutely something that you can do in every single meeting, in every single conversation. So Daniel, I love that example because you can talk about safety, right? You can talk about project management. You just don't talk about it like PM speak that you're shoving at people, right? You
I
talk about,
haven't.
look at what this team achieved to move the whole business forward.
Yeah.
And behind the curtain, we use project management for that, right?
Exactly. So I have a friend that I studied with, and she actually teaches project management in Darden University. And she told me that, today in the universities, when they talk about project management, they teach everything through case studies.
Mm-hmm.
So we could do the same thing in our organizations, right?
Right.
We can have like hero stories or things that happen in one of the projects, either very recently or maybe way back when. And then you talk about this, and through that, you get people to understand what you're trying to strive to. Henny, you wanted to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. It's an interesting discussion. Now, when I hear Laura talking, I was thinking about when I was a global PMO head.
Yeah.
Traveling a lot, and the first thing I was always doing when I visited a business unit was to start with the management team.
Yeah.
And what I called my project board awareness sessions. And I repeated those every time when I came back. I started with those project board awareness. What does it mean if you are a part of a project board? What does it mean in your role as an executive to support a project manager? Not when a project is not going well, okay, then you see the spotlights on the project manager, and the executive is taking 2 or 3 steps back, and the spotlights are on the project manager, and then there is a discussion and the project manager will be fired. No, it has to be the other way around. So what can you do to make the project manager successful? And there I use these project board awareness sessions, and that starts sometimes very simple. Then you look an executive in the eyes, and then you say, okay, what was the last time that you had a cup of coffee with your project manager? Cup of coffee with my project manager. We have every 2 weeks a project board. I receive status reports. No, I would like to hear, when did you have a cup of coffee? Yeah, but okay, what does that mean if you have a cup of coffee? Maybe you can create an atmosphere where the project manager can tell you what keeps him or her awake during nights.
Yeah.
If you know that, then you know what you have to do as an executive. And that's really helpful. To facilitate the discussions, I always ask the project managers in the business unit, okay, what do you think about the executives? And I did the same, asking the executives, what do you think about your own role in making changes successful?
Yeah.
And then I brought those 2 groups together, and we had discussions, okay, because there were always enormous differences. They thought we are fantastic. And the project managers thought, okay, but it's absolutely not going in the right direction. And then having those discussions. Now, you can only have them, coming back to the first one about trust. When there is really trust, you can have those open discussions. But it will definitely help your organization to make a step forward.
Yeah. So in the organizations that I talk to about these issues, I talk to them about 2 kinds of communication. You have the formal communication, the meetings and the reports and all that. Yeah. And then you have all the informal communication, which is what you were talking about, Henny, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And most of the things that really impact the project happen during these informal communications.
Yeah.
Story.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
We were I was part of a project, actually. This was in Portland, Oregon, and I was part of a project there with Intel. And there was a big dispute between the main contractor and the program manager from Intel there. They were very, very late, and things didn't go as planned. And there was a lot of tension. But we did have, every Friday, there was a casual Friday where we met after hours in a bar very near the Intel facility there. Yeah. So we would meet there. And at one of those instances, the program manager from Intel met with the project manager from the supplier, and they had this informal discussion where the guy from Intel was talking about all the fact that he has to meet his deadlines. This is what's most important to him. And the guy from the contracting company was saying, we're having financial difficulties, and we're not meeting our budget objectives and our profit objectives, and that's what's really weighing on me. And through this discussion where they talked about this informally, and they understood each other's pain points, they were able to, the guy from Intel said, look, we can throw, more money into this. That's not a big deal, but I have to meet my deadline. So through this informal communication, they were able to get there. And again, that's part of, what we were talking about, the culture and things that we can do.
Yeah, but then they say to me, but Henny, when I talk to project managers, we have here a culture with, there are secretaries. They will protect senior management. So I have no chance to talk to them. And then I'm always saying, but there is always a starting moment during the day. There is always a moment when an executive will leave the office. So these are the moments where you have to take the chance, to talk to. So when you say, when will we start? Yeah, at 7 a.m. Okay, no problem. Be there. Jump into the same elevator. And then ask him, I'm struggling with this or that. Do you have 5 minutes to drink a cup of coffee and I can explain to you? Then they will say yes.
That's great.
Find your simple ways to start those informal communications. And I think this will be really beneficial.
One of the really important things to do to get their attention is to make it about them and really understand their WIFM, their what's in it for me, right? So these techniques are wonderful. And I can tell you that they can try and say, hey, I need some help. But if that business leader doesn't understand why this is important, or maybe, and this, I'll tell you, a lot of executives have told me, they say before working with me, they were terrible sponsors. After working with me, they realized that they used to be terrible sponsors. So part of the issue is they don't really know how to do that job, nor do they understand what they're supposed to do sometimes to solve these problems. So when we have to be very careful, because the higher up you are in the organization, the more you will need to rely on sound bites and data points and connection to why you should care. Right. So because they're running in 15 different directions, and right now, many of them might be working on Zoom as opposed to being in person. And if they are, there is still a situation where they're in 45 Zoom meetings a day, and they've always their calendar. You look at their calendars. And I remember when I was an executive, my meetings were like triple overlapped. And so to grab their attention, we've got to start with why they should care. And, and we've all heard this, but we've got to bring solutions, not problems, right? So we might say, hey, instead of saying, hey, I need your help to solve a problem, you can say, I wanted to run something by you. Here's why it matters to you. And I think we can move the ball forward really quickly on this if I get 5 minutes, right? So in that one, sentence, you can cover why they should care, that you've already got a solution, so they don't have to work hard to figure out the solution. They can evaluate, it's always easier to edit than create and look at a blank page, right? So we don't want to come with our hands up and saying, here's all my problems. We can say, hey, there is something, this is why you should care. This is how we're going to, here's a way or two that we're thinking about solving it and what the impact's going to be, right? Because they might say, I don't have time right now. And you can say, but if we solve this now, this is how we can move this project forward. If we don't solve this now, the project, is going to be stuck waiting for this answer, right? So all those things can be done in one sentence, and then they'll give you the time because they realize, oh, I am the holdup here, right? Most executives don't realize how much they are the holdup because we don't take responsibility to say, hey, you're the holdup, right? And so the whole project can be delayed because some leader didn't show up for a meeting to make a decision, right?
Exactly, yes. So yeah, definitely very important. So
that's the decision I was talking about. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. This is exactly how you have to do it. So I just want to make sure that was clear for everyone watching. The mechanisms that we have all found as the most useful way to have that conversation step by step so that they can get their business leaders' attention.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that's really, really interesting stuff. So have you ever encountered a company that you think that can't change the culture of the organization?
So I can take that. I'm like chomping at the bit on that one. Here's the thing. So anytime I would speak on a stage, I would ask people to raise their hand if they thought people were resistant to change. Anytime I teach a class, are people resistant to change? Everyone raises their hands. And then I follow up by saying, really? Have you met anyone that's gotten married on purpose? Have you met anyone that's had children on purpose? Right? We do change all the time. What, you know, people love change. What they don't love is having change done to them, right? So the problem we have is that when we try and, you know, force this PM culture, or we try to say, you know we have the medicine you need to take. When we try and do change to people instead of with them, we face resistance. Yeah. And so it is a false premise, because human beings evolved because they can embrace change. And we do change to ourselves all the time. We try a new restaurant, we take a new course. Every single person listening to this session is someone that embraces change. Yeah. What they don't want is to have it shoved at them or done to them. So if we change the way we bring people with us through the change process, then we won't have change resistance. If we do the change with them, if we take them by the hand and we say, hey, I want your input, I want your feedback, you know, how can we improve your life? How do we make it about them and let them own getting to those outcomes? Let them be a part of that solution. Even your naysayers that say that everything you're doing is going to fail, right? Those are you want to hug your haters, because those are the people that will tell you everything that's going to go wrong with what you're trying to do, and give you every line item in your risk register comes from the naysayers, right? So if you're trying to implement a change, you want to hug your haters, pull them into the conversation, let them tell you everything that could possibly go wrong, and then let them help you fix it by saying, okay, so, wow, I really didn't think of that. What would you do if you had to change this? If your life depended on it, how would you fix it? And before you know it, you implement their solutions, and your haters are your biggest advocates, because you did it their way instead of yours.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe ambassadors even.
What?
Maybe even ambassadors.
Exactly.
That's what
change agents in the organization. You're champions. I totally agree. But that's the thing, is that we really have to stop blaming the culture. In fact, I just released a podcast episode. It's number 69. That's the top mistakes PMO leaders make. And one of them is blaming the culture, because we will blame the culture. We will blame change resistance as the reason. And it's just us being lazy and not doing our work to do it right. Because people want their lives improved. So don't talk about, here's 5 more templates for you to fill out. Say, hey, you want to be able to get to Bobby's soccer game on time? Here's what we're going to do, right? Or football game for most of you listening. If you want to get to the football game on time and go see your kid play, here's the answer to that. When we fix this process, you're going to be in a much better position to be able to leave work on time. You down for that? Great. I know you are. So that it's really just changing the whole dynamic. And then they, like you said, Henny, they become the ambassadors for the change in the organization, and they become your marketing engine. They become the people that are bragging about you, telling all the success stories, because they did it, it helped them, and you're the magic behind it, right? So
now you're saying something, success stories.
Yes, exactly.
Celebrate those successes.
Yes.
And then you have the positive examples to spread in your organization. And then people start thinking, okay, see what is happening there. So why are we not going to make that change? And then you turn it around, and it's not pushing. No, they are pulling, and they want to have to make it happen.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's what you need to achieve.
Yeah, Henny, that's one thing I think is super important, is really changing that whole dynamic. So my students in my PMO programs, their business leaders are calling them first when the pandemic happens. The business leaders are calling them first when they've got a big decision to make, or they've got to move projects around or people around. They call them first because they know that they are the sound mind and body team that can really tell them, is this doable? Can we do this? Can we make this change? They trust them, and they count on them as the trusted advisor, the strategic business partner, because they know that they can help them with that answer. They build that credibility. But it can't happen if you're shoving everything at people. So I think you're right on, Henny.
Yeah, great. Okay, so do you think that there's any specific things that PMOs can do in organizations, very specialized things that will really help the organization? Is there anything that you say, this is what a PMO office needs to do in my organization?
And you want to go first?
I think many things. So I said, okay, it's not only the focus on the project managers or the project support. It's definitely, I think, a very big influence you can have on senior management. And that's why I started with those awareness sessions. So I think that's something you can definitely do. What I also have done in many places, creating a community or communities, center of excellence, spreading all kinds of things, and then asking, for example, the organization, project managers, bringing them together, share your experiences. And what we now see in the agile movements, talking about walls of fame, but also walls of failure. And what can we learn from those failures? And share that information. Create communities of practice as a PMO. Be in the driver's seat to facilitate that. And then it can run by themselves. And then you can even take a step backwards. And then it will continue. Because when you put those people together, they see the added value when they share their problems, their successes, and what you can learn from them. And I think that's really, really helpful. And as a PMO, you can start, you can be the trigger to bring that up to speed, and when it's there, okay. And these are just a few things.
In your example before, you talked about the team building exercise that you did with the project team. So, sometimes that's great to do the team building. And sometimes when you get to an organization that is mature enough and the people can talk to one another openly, that's really great. Sometimes in order to get to that point, I find that playing games is a really good thing to do with a team together. That's actually why we put together the board games that we've created, so people could talk about a project and it's not their project. So it's like distancing it from yourself. It's not me. It's not my project. I'm talking in general right now and what we do in this project. So, it's like you go to the shrink and you tell him that my friend there has this issue, right? So with your game,
so safe.
So you can talk about, you play a game, and through the game, you can talk about different things that maybe hurt people, but they don't feel open enough yet to talk about in the organization. But if they're talking about the game, that's fine. I mean, you can talk about whatever you want because it's about the game. So, just another idea.
You're fully right. So we also used, maybe you've heard about that, building the pyramid of Egypt as a project management game.
Okay.
To understand what is happening there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a huge project.
Yeah. That's and it's a very old one.
Yeah.
Do you know the Marshmallow Challenge?
Sorry?
There's a Marshmallow Challenge game.
Yeah.
So we play that a lot when we just introduce project management into the organization. We start by doing this Marshmallow Challenge. And whoever wants to learn more about that, you can just go online, type the Marshmallow Challenge, and you'll find out more about it. It's an actual project. You can divide people into teams, do this project, and then you can talk about things, again, that happened during their project. And then, you can zoom into whatever you're really interested to talk about. Some organizations really want to talk about, we need better planning. So through the game, you can talk about that. If you want to increase the communication, either formal or informal communication, you can do it through those games as well. So
the games are nice. At this moment, I am working with Marisa Silva, and we wrote an article about project creatures, which can slow down your portfolio delivery. And we talked about pet projects, looking at a project from a senior manager, no direct connection with the strategy of the organization. We talked about ghost projects. So a project which is consuming a lot of resources, but there is no executive, no sponsor for that project, or a cockroach project. You can kill it, but before you know, it's there again. So it still consumes resources. Or the Peacock project, which is just an enormous thing about this project. So it's so fantastic, and we don't know. Or the Fake Nose project is also a nice one. So we worked on this project for 3 years. It was absolutely a failure. So we just gave it a new name. and then we can start over again. So take note. And now we are trying to develop a sort of card game behind this. So talking about games, so that's why I think about this, is really to help, okay, when you look at a PMO, helping senior management, setting up a portfolio, that those kind of creatures are part of your portfolio and you have to get rid of them. How can you kill those creatures to have a more healthy portfolio? And then doing it in a fun way, is really helpful.
So Daniel, I'd like to answer your question about the kind of things that the PMO can do in an organization to kind of help. What's the big thing? I have this framework called the Impact Driver framework. I call my community impact drivers. And Henny, from me being a part of the PMO Impact Summit, we have this mobile app in this community, and I'm always talking to them about being an impact driver. But what does impact really mean? Well, it stands for some things that I think are really big mindset shifts that PMO leaders can make, and then instill those mindset shifts in others in the organization. So instill focus so you can set a really strong foundation. We have got to help connect people to the why of the work that they're doing and the outcomes they're trying to help the organization achieve. And we have to also make sure that we have our people not doing 643 things every day. That's why they can't get anything done, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got to connect to that why. The second one is measure outcomes. We spend a lot of time measuring time, scope, and cost, and not enough time measuring the impact we're helping the organization achieve. So we have to go beyond. And the podcast episode and the session I did with Sunil Prashara, the CEO of PMI, specifically talked to me about how the role is changing for PMO leaders and project managers, that we must be responsible for helping the organization achieve not just benefits, but benefits that were worth it in the first place, which is return on investment. And so that shift has to happen. Performing relentlessly. We've got to streamline and optimize and get rid of stuff that is standing in the way of accelerating delivery. So I'm not saying throw all templates out the window, but we do have to make sure that every single step we put in the process is accelerating getting to those outcomes, not just another step in the process. And then we have to adapt to thrive. We have got to shift the way we do the work we do. We have to be nimble and flexible. And when the needs of our organization shift, we have to be able to shift too. And that's a big mistake we make, is that, oh, this is the way we do projects, or it must be all agile, or it must be all waterfall, or it must be all these things. And then we aren't nimble and flexible when things like a global pandemic happen, right? And then communicate with purpose. Stop creating 16-page status reports if you want your business leaders to make a decision for you. We've got to streamline our communications. Do not send FYI emails. Oh, by the way, go read this, 16-page story so you can figure out in there somewhere the thing I needed from you, right? We've got to streamline the way we communicate, how we're doing it, daily stand-ups as opposed to 3-hour meetings where everyone's going through every possible status item they did that week. Nobody cares, right? And then transform mindset. And usually when I get to this step, people say, oh, great, now I get to change everyone else's minds about project management and the PMO. No, we transform our own mindset so that we can create that impact delivery culture. We have to think differently about our role. We are an impact driver. We are an investment manager. We are managing the organization's investments. If you're running a PMO, you have a portfolio of investments, right? So we have to, if we want to become the strategic business partners that our business leaders are begging us to be, if we want a seat at the table, we have to shift the way we do what we do. So the impact driver mindsets, that model, you can find it on the PMO Strategies podcast back in the early lessons, way back, in like 001 through 8. Those will tell you those impact driver mindsets. But I think if you don't do those things, like that's what we're all talking about here, Henny and Daniel, that's what we're trying to have PMO leaders understand. If you want to shift the culture, you have to shift your mindset first.
That's great. So Laura, where can you find all these podcasts?
It's the PMOs, every player. It's on, now we're on Amazon. We just got added to the Amazon player too. So, you can find them right on my website at PMOstrategies.com. You click on podcast. You can listen to them right from the website. They're in our Impact Driver mobile app. You can listen to them right from the mobile app. And then of course they're Google Play Store, Apple Store. They're in all the iTunes, all the places, Spotify, Stitcher. And then Amazon just added us to theirs as well. So anywhere online, you can find all the places you can listen to it.
Okay, that's wonderful. So guys, I think we're out of time. So this was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys did too. And looking forward to talking to you guys again.
Yes, thank you so much for having us here. And Henny, it's always a pleasure to share stage with you. Daniel, you as well. I can't wait to play some of your cool new games.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Laura. Bye-bye.